Hey guys, Lord Naren White here, the Holy Ghost, the one true God. Back with you with the next video in my series reading Oliver Twist by Charles Dickens. Without further ado, returning to Oliver Twist as read by Lord Naren White. Nothing that I know of, except sitting in this closed place for I don't know how long at all, replied the girl, carelessly. Come, let me get back. That's a dear. With a sigh for every piece of money, Fagin told the amount into her hand. They parted without more conversation, merely interchanging a good night. When the girl got into the open street, she sat down upon a doorstep and seemed for a few moments wholly bewildered and unable to pursue her way. Suddenly she arose, and hurrying on, in a direction quite opposite to that in which Sikes was awaiting her, returned, quickened her pace until it gradually resolved into a violent run. After completely exhausting herself, she stopped to take breath, and, as if suddenly recollecting herself and deploring her inability to do something she was bent upon, wrung her hands and burst into tears. It might be that her tears relieved her, or that she felt the full hopelessness of her condition, but she turned back, and hurrying with nearly as great rapidity in the contrary direction, partly to recover lost time, and partly to keep pace with the violent current of her own thoughts, soon reached the dwelling where she had left the housebreaker. If she betrayed any agitation when she presented herself to Mr. Sikes, he did not observe it, for merely inquiring if she had brought the money, and receiving a reply in the affirmative, he uttered a growl of satisfaction, and, replacing his head upon the pillow, resumed the slumbers with which her arrival had interrupted. It was fortunate for her that the possession of money occasioned him so much employment next day, in the way of eating and drinking, and withal had so beneficial an effect in smoothing down the asperities of his temper, that he had neither time nor inclination to be very critical upon her behavior and deportment. That she had all the abstracted and nervous manner of one who is on the eve of some bold and hazardous step, which it has required no common struggle to resolve upon, would have been obvious to the lynx-eyed Fagin, who would most probably have taken the alarm at once, but Mr. Sikes, lacking the niceties of discrimination, and being troubled with no more subtle misgivings than those which resolve themselves into a dogged roughness of behavior towards everybody, and being furthermore in an unusually amiable condition, as has already been observed, say nothing unusual in her demeanor, saw nothing, and indeed troubled himself so little about her, that, had her agitation been far more perceptible than it was, it would have been very unlikely to have awakened his suspicions. As that day closed in, the girl's excitement increased, and when night came on, she sat by, watching until the housebreaker should drink himself asleep, there was an unusual paleness in her cheek and a fire in her eye that even Sikes observed with astonishment. Mr. Sikes, being weak from the fever, was lying in bed, taking hot water with his gin to render it less inflammatory, and had pushed his glass towards Nancy to be replenished for the third or fourth time, when these symptoms first struck him. Why, burn my body, said the man, raising himself on his hands as he stared the girl in the face. You look like a corpse come to life again. What's the matter? Matter, replied the girl. Nothing. What do you look at me so hard for? What foolery is this? Demanded Sikes, grasping her by the arm and shaking her roughly. What is it? What do you mean? What are you thinking of? Of many things, Bill, replied the girl, shivering, and as she, let me say that again. Of many things, Bill, replied the girl, shivering, and as she did so, pressing her hands upon her eyes. But Lord, what odds in that? The tone of forced gaiety in which the last words were spoken seemed to produce a deeper impression on Sikes than the wild and rigid look which had preceded them. I tell you what it is, said Sikes. If you haven't caught the fever and got it coming on now, there's something more than usual in the wind, and something dangerous too. You're not a going to... No, Tam. You wouldn't do that. Do what? Asked the girl. There ain't, said Sykes, fixing his eyes upon her, and muttering the words to himself. There ain't a stauncher-hearted gal going, or I'd have cut her throat 3 months ago. She's got the fever coming on, that's it. Fortifying himself with this assurance, Sykes drained the glass to the bottom, and then, with many grumbling oaths, called for his psychic. The girl jumped up with great alacrity, poured it out quickly, but with her back towards him, and held the vessel to his lips while he drank off the contents. Now, said the robber, come and sit aside of me, and put on your own face, or I'll alter it so that you won't know it again when you do want it. The girl obeyed. Sykes, locking her hand in his, fell back upon the pillow, turning his eyes upon her face. They closed, opened again, closed once more, again open. He shifted his position restlessly, and, after dozing again and again, for 2 or 3 minutes, and as often springing up with a look of terror, and gazing vacantly about him, was suddenly stricken, as it were, while in the very attitude of rising into a deep and heavy sleep. The grasp of his hand relaxed, the upraised arm fell languidly by his side, and he lay like one in a profound trance. The laudanum has taken effect at last, murmured the girl, as she rose from the bedside. I may be too late, even now. She hastily dressed herself in her bonnet and shawl, looking fearfully round. From time to time, as if despite the sleeping draught, she expected every moment to feel the pressure of Sykes' heavy hand upon her shoulder. Then, stopping softly over the bed, she kissed the robber's lips, and then opening and closing the room door with noiseless touch, hurried from the house. A watchman was crying 9:30, down a dark passage through which she had to pass, in gaining the man's thoroughfare. Has it long gone, the half hour? Asked the girl. It'll strike the hour in another quarter, said the man, raising his lantern to his face. And I cannot get there in less than an hour or more, muttered Nancy, brushing swiftly past him, gliding rapidly down the street. Many of the shops were already closing in the back lanes and avenues through which she tracked her way, in making from Spital Fields towards the west end of London. The clock struck 10, increasing her impatience. She tore along the narrow pavement, elbowing the passengers from side to side, and darting almost under the horses' heads, crossed crowded streets, where clusters of persons were eagerly watching their opportunity to do the like. The woman is mad, said the people, turning to look after her as she rushed away. When she reached there, the more wealthy quarter of the town, the streets were comparatively deserted, and here her headlong progress excited a still greater curiosity in the stragglers whom she hurried past. Some quickened their pace behind, as though to see whether she was hastening at such an unusual rate, and a few made head upon her, and looked back surprised at her undiminished speed. But they fell off one by one, and when she neared her place of destination she was alone. It was a family hotel in a quiet but handsome street near Hyde Park. As the brilliant light of the lamp which burned before its door guided her to the spot, the clock struck 11. She had loitered for a few paces as though irresolute, and making up her mind to advance, but the sound determined her, and she stepped into the hall. The porter's seat was vacant. She looked round with an air of incertitude, and advanced towards the stairs. Now, young woman, said a smartly dressed female, looking out from a door behind her, who do you want here? A lady who is stopping in this house, answered the girl. A lady, was the reply, accompanied with a scornful look. What lady? Miss Maylie, said Nancy. And we'll go ahead and stop there for this week. As usual, I want to say thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. Please like, comment, and subscribe, as it greatly helps the channel. Light be with you all. Take care, and thanks again.